Morning, Sammy.
What's up, folks?
What's happening?
Uh,
Good
listen,
Saturday morning.
man, it's been rainy here, so today's like really a good sunny day. Dude, Julie, we put some fish in our pond yesterday, right?
She sent me the
The
Snapchat. It was pretty badass.
Well, this morning she was walking the pond and she found a what do you call it? I what do you call it? Like what's like before a frog becomes a frog, it's a
Tadpole.
tadpole. She found a tadpole that looks like it's like the size of a grown fish.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
No, that's scary. That looks like a giant dinosaur's sperm or something.
Did you take a picture?
She's got some video.
All right, tell her to
You
send it.
lost your video though. You're not on camera.
Yeah, I'm gonna be off camera for a few seconds. I'm sharing the feed, and so
Are we live yet?
Yeah, we're live.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sammy. I will be your host today.
Why are you so creepy? I fucking love you.
If there is anything you want to talk about, all you gotta do is let us know.
Ding ding.
Well, listen, we're on Formers Anonymous Saturday morning show, I guess we're going to call it, where we talk about things that we would normally talk about in group, but we talk about them with the public and just try to spread awareness. We feel that transparency is a core key component of who we are, right? Because unlike a lot of other 12-step groups, we're talking about, in many regards, as the basis of why this program came about, components related to criminality, violence, street life, hatred, could be racism. You know, some of our members are, ex-domestic terrorists, others are gang members, and some are more of your traditional buttheads in the sense that, drugs, rock and roll, alcohol, bad decisions. And then you got people like Monte and me who have turned being criminals into a career. And now we are starting our second careers in life and just trying to be good men, good dads, good friends, good brothers,
good community members.
Just good community members, solid community members, and we have a responsibility. Yeah, as formers, we feel like we have a responsibility to be transparent with our community, right? Like, you guys need to see our process. We want you to see it. For those of you interested, right? Like, a lot of this process happens behind closed doors. Right. And then nobody really knows what's going on in there. And that's not a criticism, that's just a difference, right? And so because we're addressing, the harm that we've caused communities and individuals and our families and our loved ones and our partners, we feel like we owe it to you for you to see what we're about, what the process looks like. Look, it's not rocket science, but it is tough and it's complex, it's complicated at times. But I think we do everything we can to take a complicated situation and distill it down to a process that we can all understand and appreciate and follow. Like, that's taking the next step. But we do a lot to challenge the what do you call it, the status quo. I for one, having gone through an entire overhaul of my life, I realized that I cannot stay married to tradition for the sake of tradition. For example, when I was married, divorced now, one of my kids had long hair and they wanted to cut it. And I was hell-bent on them not cutting their hair. And I don't know, I can't tell you why this is a tradition in my family, right? Why this is I just know that it was something, more or less, I felt like when I reflect on it, that I inherited it. I inherited this belief that became a tradition. And then I was imposing that tradition on a child who really, was too young to understand the connection to a tradition in her hair. And, I was not the one who had to wear that mop on my head during the hottest days of the summer, or while they were trying to dance or swim, or just be a kid and wake up in the morning and look at like they got an hour ahead of them just to get their hair to, like I wasn't the one living under that tradition, but I was the one imposing that tradition. And, you know, and I was asked to consider that, like, where does that belief come from? You know, a lot of these beliefs that we have, we just follow, we just do. And I think it's deeper than just being blind or lack of self-awareness, because look, there are statistics that show that if you have a parent who's been to jail, you're more likely to go to jail. If you have a parent who goes to prison, you're more likely to go to prison. If you have a parent who is violent, you're more likely to be a parent. It looks like this is still coming underneath the Our Community banner, Monte. Stacey just commented, and it looks like it came under a banner of OC. Good morning, everyone. You see what I'm talking about, Monte? You are on mute.
I added that. So I have control of the OCOR page, everything but Formers. We got to get this up on our Formers page. I'll call Julie this afternoon.
Okay.
And put that up.
Yeah. Okay. So that's just going to be what shows under our commenting then, the OCOR?
No, just that one was.
Oh, okay. I got you. Okay. Good morning, Stacey. We should probably, before we jump into the topic, as I've already done so eloquently and, you know, with my Barry White impression here, we should probably let everybody know that we've moved our Saturday morning meeting to Thursday nights at
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Let me see what time that would be in Poland for our friend Stashik.
Well, 6 hours ahead there, so.
Excuse me. I will use my world clock to determine this. Let me see here.
Like 1 a.m.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Too bad, so sad.
6-7 hours.
Are you closer to Krakow or Warsaw? Stashik, are you closer to Krakow or Warsaw? It'd be like 3 p.m. over there, maybe. Okay.
Right now, yeah.
Can you hear me, Stashik? Are you closer to Krakow or Warsaw in Poland? No,
right.
Between Krakow and Warsaw. I don't know. Berlin.
He's closer to Berlin.
It can't. It's only giving me 2 options. Let me try Berlin. Let me see if I can do that. Yeah, no results found. Isn't that where the wall was? Yeah, no. I guess I got limited options. It's Krakow or Warsaw. Which one? Pick one. Any
right
moment.
Now it's 15:45, so it's 3:45 there now.
Right. So when it's 7 our time, so it'd be closer to Warsaw.
Closer to Warsaw.
So where does that put us? Is that 6 hours ahead of us? So it'd be like 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, you're gonna start waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning down there. You're just staying up early too. Thursdays, not like you got a life or you need to do anything else other than your life, but right. To be standing around for our meetings at 7 p.m. on Thursday nights, you can jump on even for 2 or 3 minutes. Just have a t-shirt on at least when you come.
Isn't that so American of us? Like we're just gonna
impose it. Yes,
right.
You know, I had a better time at 9 o'clock in the morning. I felt it was more universal, but you know.
Well, unfortunately, on Thursdays at 9 o'clock in the morning, most of our members work.
I don't know. I'd like to take a poll. How many of our members actually work at 9 o'clock in the morning? I know some of these folks, including Dave. I don't think anyone's working at 9 o'clock in the morning.
How big of a poll are you looking to take? I mean,
let's do it. How big of a poll are you willing to take?
Small. Just a quick couple people, right?
Go big or go home with this. That's all I gotta tell you, buddy.
All
right. So listen, Linda. All right. We were talking about transparency being important, which is why we're doing this show and then having our meetings. Now, very unique to our 12-step model. All of our meetings are open also. So even though those happen off grid and, in a room somewhere or online somewhere, not necessarily being broadcast to the public, anyone in the public who wants to attend can attend the meeting, right? Like that's something that I felt was important, part of that transparency. So you can see from the very beginning, back in 2012, transparency, was an important deal. Hey, Stashek, we're gonna let's talk right after the meetings over here, bro. We're gonna sign off at our regular time at 11. If you want to jump on camera for a little bit, you can. We're gonna talk about the topic, and then we can bring you on if you want. So let Monte know if you want to jump on the camera with us for a few minutes today.
I already sent him a link.
All right, okay. Great. It's incredible to see Monte's development. Getting proactive and do things. Normally, I had to
as soon as I jumped on, I generated a link and sent it over to him to see if he wanted to join.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, having said that, there are two things we want to talk about today. We want to talk about the first step, but I also want to spend a few minutes talking about the word former, because it's important. I know that, I have two sides of this. One, as a person who's attended 12-step groups and has gone to 12-step groups since 1997, and another who is a mental health therapist and has had to create programs, diagnose people, assess people, treat people, create plans, host clinical groups and one-on-one sessions, work with them and their psychiatrists. So on the mental health side, right? As a clinician, I've worked in that space. Yeah. But my personal experiences informed my principles and my values as a therapist, right? I didn't separate from that just because I became a professional. What do I mean by that? So there are two parts to this. The first part was I was in an AODA program, an alcohol and drug abuse program that was basically forced on me. I had a problem, but I wasn't willing, and it wasn't even that I was willing. I didn't see that problem. And you're probably thinking, well, Sammy, your life was in shambles. You spent most of your life in prison. You were very violent. You need to understand something, and I think Monte would agree with this. That wasn't a problem for me. That lifestyle, that was just the way the life was, right? That, to me, that was my life. That was my normal. And in fact, I would have said, those of you trying to tell me I had a problem were the ones with the real problem. I had a conversation with my oldest friend in the world, Violetta, way back when. She's the only person in my life today that knew me then and who knows me now, right? And she used to always tell me, I love you, Sammy. I miss you, Sammy. I hope they never let you out of there. Because I routinely talked about murder, wanting to commit murders, who I was going to execute. I would call her. I mean, she's the nicest person in the world, man. She is so sensitive. And I used to tell her that she was a sheep, that she was the one who had no self-awareness, that we lived in a much uglier side of the world that she knows nothing about, and as a result, couldn't really tell me anything. And I shamed her a lot. Like I used my positions. I realized in hindsight, there was a lot of shame involved. Like, for example, I was using our history, our historical context around what the Europeans did when they came here back in the 1400s, and even before that and after that, right? I use that as a basis to say, look, you speak Spanish, you practice Christmas. Those aren't your native languages. You don't even know who you really are. You've been brainwashed. You've been I think the big term back then that we were using, you've been assimilated. Right, and we're using that term as a form of shame. And while what I was saying was true, I was using it as a weapon to kind of make my points, right? fast forward to what I'm talking about right now. So here I am in this AODA program, and they're telling me that if I've ever drank alcohol, and because I'm a criminal, that automatically makes me more or less an alcoholic. Or if I've ever used drugs and I'm a criminal, that automatically means I have a problem with drugs. Um, one of the facts that I'm not proud of, but I have to stand behind, is that most of the decisions I made that ruined my life were done while I was sober and clean. I never went through withdrawals. I never, I never used on a daily basis. And I know that there are exceptions to some of these rules that person might say, well, no, you're still a chemical dependent person. No, I want to let you know right now, I don't have if I were, I would not have no problem owning that. Like I could say to you, I've owned everything else about me, right? There's nothing in my system that would resist owning something that is mine to own. Like I can own it, man. I have owned. I was just on a presentation I gave last week, Saturday or Sunday. I must have stuck my foot in my mouth because somebody in the audience, called out something I said. And I said, what? You're right. I own that. And I'm in front of like 600 people. I'm like, I own that. Like I can do better there. Thank you. I still got to work on myself. I still got to work on, these perspectives that I'm sharing that I know this is a changing world and they need to change with it, not stay the same. Right. And a lot of the audience appreciate that, right? Like I don't have a problem acknowledging that. I just want you to know my problem was rage, violence, power, control. And that really came from my lifestyle as a gang member and a gang leader, right? Like that's something I didn't. The only withdrawals I've ever experienced in my life were from leaving my gang when I made the decision to separate. That's the only time I remember being physically sick, feeling suicidal, isolating, depression. Like it lasted for a while because I was taking a leap and I didn't really know where I was going to land. I felt like I was choosing to die. I felt like I was giving up my power. Imagine being the CEO, me making a business case while you need to walk away from that and your family and just leave. Cold call, right? Like, hey, you need to leave now, right? How easy would that be for you, right? Like most people couldn't do it. Most people don't do it. The two people sitting here are good examples, of that because we can tell you the hundreds of people in our lives who haven't done it yet.
I remember being berated by the counselor in my AODA 5A or B program. I don't remember what it was, because I had listed on my thing that I had never used while committing crime. Like I never did a robbery drunk or high. Like I'm not stupid, right? Like I don't want to increase my risks of death or murder or incarceration. And they told me it was a manipulation of the system, that I was trying to manipulate the program. And I was just trying to explain to her I had never used drugs while doing those type of things. I had never used alcohol while doing those type of things. I'd never put myself in that position. And they said I was a liar. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like all these things that you're talking about for withdrawal, I didn't have those problems. I didn't go to county jail and need alcohol or withdraw from drugs of any kind. I had rarely, if ever, used. Smoked a little bit of pot, but I hated feeling out of control. Right, that was my addiction, was being in control, being in power, being in charge, being able to make other people do what I wanted them to do and make them want to do it. Right, it was even more than just making them do it. It was making them want to do what I want. Right, you're going to want to do this, and you're going to do it willingly. And so for me, it was hard, and it was very. It made me question my sanity, right? Like, well, maybe there was something wrong with me and not that program, right? Like, eventually they shut that program down and said it was brainwashing and it was much more violent to the human being than worth, thankfully, and they've replaced it with some pretty decent stuff. But yeah, man, it was a hard go for me because I didn't fit. and then I would go to programs, or I'd go to groups, and I wouldn't fit there. And I kept feeling like it was my fault, right? Like if I didn't gain anything from whatever group I was going to, it's because I wasn't willing enough to learn. I wasn't willing enough to take away what they had to give me as a whole, even though I used parts of it. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that was rough, bro. Hey, I got a couple of people I want to send a shout out to. One of them down in Florida. Melanie, I love you. I am so proud of everything you've accomplished. You are badass. Jim, man, Uncle's come away a lot of pine, and we love you. I love you too, bro. Thanks for joining today, Aunt Maggie. Thank you for being here. Erica, Stashik, anyone else, if you're out there watching, throw a little comment down so we can see you. And if you would, go ahead and share this feed, and make sure you're sharing it on public, because if you share it on public, we'll get notified. If you don't, we won't, right? Like I see Sammy, Biff, me, and Erica, and Stashik. Yeah, so we got some shares out there. Thank you for those shares.
Yeah.
Welcome. But yeah, Sammy, it is kind of odd, isn't it? Like,
It is. And, it goes a step further. So now that I'm being told that in order to graduate this program, I have to state that I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict.
yeah.
In addition to stating that I'm a criminal and, can't be trusted. Now, I agreed with the part about the criminality eventually. I didn't agree to start. It took me a minute. It took me a while to get to that point where I could acknowledge that my lifestyle was criminal in nature. Now, here I go to I remember my first AA meeting like it was yesterday. It was in the Chow Hall Dane unit around 1997. And two things hit me when I went there. One was, I don't really feel like I have an alcohol problem.
Right.
But more importantly, the second thought that hit me was, I really like what these guys have going on here. I liked what they were doing in principle, but I didn't feel like I related. But here's my mindset. And I think this says a lot about how I entered recovery. Even though I could tell it wasn't a best fit, it wasn't a tailor-made suit for me. It was the best that was around me. Like, that's all I had, really. That was different from the force program. The men that were coming in here were volunteers, and I really appreciated what they had to offer. Although they let me know pretty quickly that I would have to limit my comments to alcohol-related things, because they were kind of being put off by me needing to talk about gang life, street life, violence, things like that. Then I go to a minimum security prison, and that's where I meet Brian. Brian was coming into the prisons at that time. This was around 98, 99. And Brian was a member of NA. And Brian approached me and said, "Hey, you want to come check this out?" And I told him my issue, because I was already starting to talk about, like, hey, I've already been told like I don't fit in at AA because what I talk about. He's like, well, just come to NA anyway. Like, come check it out. So I went and checked it out. And, they were a lot more open in this situation. The group was very open. There was more street people there, so I could feel like there was more closer to the culture I was used to. But yet again, I did eventually run into the fact that I've been pulled aside a couple of times saying, hey, you really can't be talking about that stuff here, because that's not the purpose of our meeting. And I would argue back, like, hey, I don't have anywhere else to talk about this, man. If I don't get to talk about it here, where do I talk about it? And like, I'm sorry, like this, you can talk to a sponsor offline, or, but in the group, and so they were kind of censoring me, not being able to open up. Now, fast forward to when I become a clinician 10, 15 years later. Now my boss, who's a licensed clinician, is telling me that I got to mandate my clients to go to AA or NA. most of my clients fit the demographic I just described to you about me and you. So now I'm like, hold on, man. I can't in good faith do that. And my boss literally said to me, until you create something else, that's what they got to do. And so I went back to my office so mad and so frustrated. And I ran into the same complaints from people like me and you. They had the same reservations, the same barriers, time and time and time and time again. They would say things like, that's not my problem. That's not what pushes me. That's not what pulls me, or every time I go there, I leave more depressed, or when I go there, they don't really accept me. They don't really tell me what I need to hear as far as acceptance goes, or people didn't want to have, in their opinions, right or wrong, religion shoved down their throats, right? Like these are not my views that I'm sharing. I'm sharing clients I was working with. These are reasons they all gave me why they didn't want to go. And I kept hearing these themes in the hundreds, if not thousands of clients that I've seen over the years whenever I brought up these 12-step groups. Now, there were some people who were all about it, like, yeah, that sounds like something for me. But there was certainly, and what we've learned is it's about 13 million people just in the United States. We're not talking globally, just in the United States, who miss the net that's being cast for those 12-step groups because they don't fit the demographic. They don't fit the profile.
Right.
Right. And the profile doesn't fit them. Now, I'm all about it. When you're in Rome, do as the Romans do. I mean, you're a guest in their house, right? I didn't create AA. I didn't create NA. So what did I do? I fell in line. But every time I had to say I'm an addict, every time I had to say I'm an alcoholic, I got more and more resentful because it wasn't what was genuine. It wasn't true to me. So that's where this idea was like, well, she said it. She said a mouthful until I create something else. And so I went about the business. I shifted my questions to now exploring not only what was wrong with the 12-step groups as they stood to these particular individuals, right? Like in their opinions, what was wrong. Because I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. I'm saying there were people with opinions like mine that didn't feel like it was a good fit. I started asking them, well, what would be a good fit? And essentially that's what we created FA out of, that feedback, right? And so as I got into writing the literature, I realized like, man, there's a need for this. And I remember the very first person I showed it to was Chris. And Chris is probably, Chris is an assassin.
Man, for real.
Right? Chris is an assassin, right?
Gangster
And
shit.
Chris was like, bro, this is the shit right here. This is what I'm talking about. Let's do this. And then it was me and Chris holding those meetings down for like a month by ourselves. No one showed up. And then one day, 1 showed up. And then one day, 7 showed up. And then another 7. And then it just took off, right? And it was like people were thirsty. It was an oasis in a desert of a message that people could resonate with, man, like us, man.
I remember the first time I came to group, and it was like the 3rd or 4th real big group that was being held. And I remember I just came home. I just did 18 years straight. I had been going to Rayco and Grove Club for a few weeks. Both groups told me I didn't fit and that I shouldn't be there. They told me to go to NA. NA said I really didn't fit. They didn't know what to do with me. And I resented, like we were talking about the word alcohol, calling myself an alcoholic or an addict, right? I resented having to say that every time I said it, right? It made me angry. I felt disrespected. I felt demeaned. I felt belittled. Like I had these strong feelings about representing myself as an addict or an alcoholic. And I'm talking about my personal feelings, you guys. Whatever works, I'm down with you. But for me, it hurt me every time I said it. Like I had struggled for so long before being released to try to rebuild who I was, that I felt like it discounted everything that I did to that point to be a better person. Like, I'm still the same person I was because I'm still this, either an alcoholic or an addict, depending on how they wanted to label me at that point. But A and NA didn't really want me, right? They didn't know what to do with me. It's not that they didn't want me, because they were still there to fellowship with me, right? But they didn't know what to do to me. My sponsor was like, bro, you're not an alcoholic. I don't know why you're here. He was like, you want to go have coffee afterwards and hang out? Joey, oh, my brother, Joey Pierce, I love you, bro. Yeah, right? So I came into Formers by chance. I had gotten your phone number from one of my sisters. They're like, hey, check out this dude. His name's Sammy. Call him. I called you. You're kind of a dick on the phone. Like, you weren't a dick, but you were just like really abrupt. Yeah, right. Okay, come to the meeting at this time on this day. We'll see you there. You're like, show me. And I was like, well, dude, think he's talking to, right? Show me, right? And so I was supposed to meet up with my cousin Mike for the first time since I had been out, and I hadn't seen him in years. And he was like, well, I can't meet you tonight until later. I got this thing I do. I'll call you when I'm done. And I'm like, he was like, I got a group to go to, and then hung up. And I was like, well, I'm going to go to this group anyways, right? It's the only out time I get. So I banged out and I walked in, and there's Mike and his girlfriend, Sandy. And I immediately thought, okay, this is weird, right? Like, let's check it out. And we sat down. But I immediately understood. So I think you should define the word former, right? Because you defined it that day. And I felt like I fit immediately. It was like a puzzle piece, right? I was like, damn, right? This takes into account what I've done, who I'm becoming, and what I'm growing into. It didn't just take into all my past shitty deeds, right? We still recognized them. We still accepted the fact that those are the things we did. But we built on that. You built on that word by giving me the ability to say, hey, this isn't just about what I used to do. This is about what I'm doing, right? It was an adjective. It was right there and then, right? We are forming something. I am forming something. I'm not just a used to be, right? And so for me, having that first part of it made me so open to the second part, right? So that first part of knowing that, listen, we're recognizing what you are. We're recognizing what you're doing. We're recognizing the strengths that you gained to get to this point. Now let's build on those strengths and continue to form a new, a new life out of these ashes. And then there was the transparency of telling exactly what it is, who I was, where I was, how I was, accepting the fact that there were hard truths to my my persona that I was trying to create and the armor that I wore, right? Like breaking those things down. I may not have been gang related, but I came out banging. Bandana, hat, matching pants, matching shirt, matching shoes, matching watch. Like, I was clicked up, even though it was neutral colors, right? Like, I never wore gangbanger colors, but I was still all white, black, bandana down to here, sunglasses, choloed out, ready to go, right? All those things were the armor that I wore to protect myself. And we broke that down in group, right? We broke that down in group. Hey, Monte, why do you think you have to walk around like that? Why do you look like you're going to eat people instead of hug them, right? All these questions that I hated. Right? Man, fuck you, bro. This is who I am. I say, what you talking about? Watch your leg. And you see now, like, I've embraced this whole dad lifestyle. I've never been happier than
you didn't choose the dad lifestyle. The dad lifestyle chose you.
And choose me. It slapped the shit out of me, man. I got monsters for children. I don't know what you're talking about. Tater woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning, climbed into my lap, punched me in my nuts to wake me up, and said, "Change the channel, Dada." I was like, "What the hell is going on here?" Right? No, man. Like, it's important that people understand. I still support those other programs. And I still tell people, if that's where you fit, that's where you should be, if it's giving you the most help. It didn't work for me. I couldn't identify myself as a disease. I couldn't connect with the people who were there because we were so different. Like they weren't bad people, but you know,
Your needs were different, man.
right? And
Right?
nobody met that until we had
Nobody had prioritized the needs to create a program for needs that we have, right? Like this isn't one size fits all. However, it's like this. Look, how many brands of cars are there, Monte? Right?
hundreds.
Let's just say 20
Okay.
brands of cars. And you got all your different, you got from your electric to your giant like earth movers, right? Like, but they all operate in the same principles, but they all do things differently. They all have like one you plug in, one you put gas, one you put diesel. One you can load up with 500 tons of dirt, and the other you can barely squeeze two people in, right? Like, but the core components of how it operates are there. But we don't all buy the same car.
Right.
And when we look at a car, we say, how does this fit my unique situation? Right? Like, all right, well, and we've gone to the point where I need more storage. I need a third row. I'd like a full sky sunroof, or I want a nice sound system, or I want to drive a car that you're supposed to drive dead bodies in, but I think it would look like this, right? So whatever it is, it's unique to the people. And so AA is unique to someone in AA. NA is unique, and there's a reason why people who are in AA might not go to NA, or some people do go to both, right? There's reasons because we say, well, it doesn't exactly fit me, or this is a great fit. When we're talking about, are great programs, but that didn't have anything to fit me. So it's like going into a store, great store, awesome store, but they don't have anything to fit me. You know where I find that at? Like the Magnificent Mile.
Yeah.
They don't sell clothes there for fat people. It's just skinny clothes, right? You're not going to find, I don't know what size pants you wear, 64 waist. You're not going to find that. But if you fit a 32, 30, yeah, you're great.
Right.
Right. So you got to keep shopping, and you don't just stop shopping for pants, right?
Right.
This is what a lot of people have done. People like me and you have had these similar experiences, quit looking. And you know why? Because there really wasn't nowhere else to look, right?
Right.
And now we have something that we've created that said, hey, look, we hear you. We understood the market. And in that market, there wasn't something that was a good fit for you. Because I will tell you, if you've ever crossed a line into criminality, if you've ever crossed a line into being violent, if you've ever crossed a line, and I mean as a lifestyle, not you had a fist fight in elementary school. No, if you embraced it as a lifestyle, gangs, jails, prisons, harming people for fun, harming people for war, for territory, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
That's a different fit. You're not. Look, I wish alcohol was that person's worst problem.
Right.
These problems are a bit more extreme in the sense that, I think when you're suffering with alcoholism, a lot of people are hurt, but you're primarily killing yourself. A lot of people do get hurt by it. Don't get me wrong. The same people that we hurt. But when you're in this lifestyle, we're taking all of that internal energy and we're shooting it out like random bullets into the world, and uncaringly, willfully, mindlessly, heartlessly doing that, right? Like I think this isn't apples to oranges. We're not comparing ourselves to. We're saying that the needs and the type of damage that we've done and that we do, it did require some special. Oh, did Lizzie bring you coffee? Hold on,
Yeah.
let me turn.
Say good morning, Lizzie.
There's nobody standing behind me trying to get me coffee right now.
Be nicer to Julie, and you might get coffee in the morning.
It's so hard, bro. That's another meeting. It's another meeting.
Hey, it's funny we're talking, and Joseph Pierce made a comment. Joe is one of my oldest friends. Knew him before I went away. Knew him when I was in a really fucked up place. So
Monte, you were always in a fucked up place, bro. You listen to your story.
He had a lot of martial arts training, and it used to fascinate us, right? Like we'd always try to learn from him, and it was hilarious because Joe is a big dude, right? Like he's my size but bigger, and he was so fluid and so smooth, and like I remember he was trying to teach me a long staff, and he was spinning it, and we all were then, right, Joe? And he made a really poignant statement to me that resonated with me years later when I was trying to be better, right? And he talked about fluidity. He had talked about moving with the environment I was in, right? Forming myself to it, but keeping myself separate, right? Like always being able to recognize my surroundings, always being able to understand, and always being able to understand what they did to me inside, right? And this was a real poignant statement to a 17-year-old, right, who looked up to this dude who was just a few years older, but was so fascinating and so amazing and such a great person, right? Like he was totally not in our lifestyle while being in our life, right? Like he was there. He was beside us. He was there to help. He was there to stand by me. He was there to be my friend, right? He could involve himself without involving himself, right? And he maintained his unity while maintaining his individuality, right? And it resonated with me years later as I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about the fluid movements of this fucking staff that this dude is just spinning and doing. It was like Bruce Lee on crack, right? He was like, oh, and I'm just standing there like, what do I do, right? But I took that and I applied it to a lot of my thought processes in life, right? How can I maintain relationships with people who aren't living the lifestyle that I want to live, right? And still remain a good friend to them if needed, right? And when to walk away when it became a danger to my life, right? And so, Joey, without even realizing it, bro, I want to tell you I love you, man. And you were a huge influence on me, especially when it came to misplaced dead-end loyalty. Like, that's such a hard one, bro. Like, especially like in a first step, when I'm first coming into recovery and deciding that I want my life to change, it's the dead-end loyalty, that misplaced loyalty that held me back for so long. Like, well, they used to do this, or they did that for me, or 5 years ago, right? When I needed them, they were there. Now, how can I walk away from that? And so Joey was one of the first people to really key me in on that, but I was way too fucked up in the head to even understand the lesson he was teaching me. And then you came in, shit, man, and reinforced that. And that was one of the first conversations, deep conversations we had was, why are you giving your loyalty to someone who doesn't care about your present or your future, right? All they care about is your past. That was a hard one, especially when taking my first step.
Yeah, you know, and so I think the process of recognizing that, look, I think the big lesson is here. Look, if there's a need there that you don't feel is being fulfilled, you have to keep looking for it, right? Like it's hard to find clothes sometimes, and how many stores are you willing to go to, right? And maybe you bombed out this weekend, but next weekend tackle. We got to keep searching, and that was the point of creating Formers, was to cast a net that was catching different people who otherwise might not ever be, captured and brought to the table where they felt like they could belong. One of the other big pieces that we got out of the research building up to Formers was most people felt that what they had to share was too dark, right? Like that what they had been through, what they had done was too bad to ever talk about. And so that was leading a lot of us to kind of consume it and hold it in and never be able to share it. But any trauma that we experienced, whether we did it to ourselves or it was done to, the only treatment that I know that really works, that makes a complete treatment, is to be able to talk about those things and to normalize it. Not to say that it's normal, but to normalize it so that you know that you're not the only one, because there's power in knowing that you're not the only one who feels this way. right? And I think Formers has really collected a lot of people who have felt like they didn't belong in any of the other 12-step groups, or finally, even if they'd never been to one of those, like that, this was a good place to rest because they were heard and understood. One thing that all 12-step groups have in common is that as soon as you walk into the room, everyone knows why you're there already. There's no secret, right? You don't even have to say it.
Yep.
We already know why you're there, and so you instantly are welcomed, man.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and I think to your point about being a former, even and I use this term as I would as if I was a clinician. If someone was diagnosed with alcoholism and it was true, like the diagnosis was true, if someone was diagnosed with chemical dependency and it was true, no matter how true it was, right? Like it's 1000% true. It's 100% true. They meet all the requirements. They themselves would say, yes, I have alcoholism. Yes, I struggle with chemical dependency. They wouldn't deny it. Here's the bigger problem I have with the approach of making people call themselves an alcoholic and an addict, whatever it may be. The words we use matter. And this isn't just a value opinion. This is rooted in science, man. There's so much research and science out there, which is what I use to inform Formers Anonymous. The current research, the development. When we look at the entire history of 12-step groups and mental health and the medical world, we've learned so much since the 40s. It should definitely be used to inform your process today.
Right.
However, some people believe that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know me, I've always said, well, there was nothing wrong with the wooden wheel.
Right.
Didn't mean we couldn't improve on it. Hell, how many times have we seen a commercial for a new and improved tire? Right? And it works. It may work better. It just may work better for some people, right? It may fulfill a need, right? Like I said, there was nothing wrong with the cart and the horse and the wagon, but we constantly look for ways to improve on things, right? Why shouldn't we do that in the 12-step world? We should constantly be looking for ways to improve that. So I said, screw it. I'm writing it. I'm going to make these improvements. Condemn me if you want. But one of the things I said we need to do away with, because almost every person, even people who wanted to go to these other 12-step groups, did not like the fact. It didn't sit well with them. And we had to listen to it. That I just don't like having to call myself an alcoholic. I don't like having to call myself a criminal. I don't like having to call myself, this or that. Because labels have an impact on people, right? And a lot of people who know that they have a problem just don't like the labels. People, and you might say, oh, well, too bad, so sad. No. In the clinical world, there's a common saying, and a lot of us have heard it, is you got to meet people where they're at.
Right.
A lot of times we're saying, here's where I'm at, and there's where you're at. Let me know when you can meet me where I'm at. No, That's not okay. If somebody is needs a coat, it's like saying, well, find me when you get an apartment. No, they need the coat. Give them the coat, right?
Right.
But in order to give you the coat, you got to get your apartment first. No, that's backwards, right? So for a lot of these men and women, having to use these titles. Now, here's where I fundamentally disagree completely with the model when it comes to the labels we use. There's a difference between being diagnosed with alcoholism and being an alcoholic. There's a difference. When I say I'm an alcoholic, guess what that is? That's a permanent state. That will forever be. Mentally, when I'm telling myself this is what I am and what I will always be and always was. There's not a lot of room for progress or growth there. People say, well, that's about acceptance. No, that's acceptance is that you live with this and that you need to live differently with this. That's acceptance. A lot of people have it, don't want to live with it, so they just go on their lives like it doesn't exist. If your doctor says the difference between 6 more months in your life and 5 more years in your life is how you eat, Some people will leave that office and go eat the exact same way. Others will go about their lives trying to change the way they eat, right? That's acceptance. Not the label you use, but the lifestyle you choose to live with the information you have now. That's acceptance. The science, the research, this isn't Sammy. The research shows you that the words you use can either have a positive or negative effect. It can either reinforce the negative behavior that you want to eliminate, or it can reinforce the positive change you want someone to make. So here's my question. Should we be focused primarily on the behaviors that we want to stop, or should we be focused primarily on the new behaviors that we need to adopt?
Right.
The research says when you focus on the behaviors that you want to stop, you actually deepen the relationship with those negative behaviors in such a way as to keep those negative behaviors current and relevant in life. Like you're fostering the negative relationship with the negative behavior instead of severing it. Instead of cutting it off, you're interacting with it. And it says research shows positive outcomes when we teach people to engage with the new behaviors. The more they engage with the new behavior, guess what happens naturally? They start to shed the old behavior. It starts to fall off naturally. But by making people constantly reflect on it and say it, and here's the simplest way I can put it. I am a human being. But what am I when I say I'm an addict? I'm not acknowledging that I'm a human being. And all the philosophers since the Roman and Greek days have said, I am is the most powerful statement that a person can come to terms with, can come to acknowledge. It's the deepest form of self-reflection and self-awareness a person can have, to say I am. That's what creates us. That's why we're so unique from the rest of the life on this planet, right? We have the ability to say I am.
I am.
And so is it more important to say I'm an addict, or is it more important to say I'm a human? In the big picture here. Now, as a mental health therapist, I've helped hundreds, if not thousands of people become sober and clean and maintain that. And I have had these conversations with them because they've brought them up. So there's even, aside from the science, aside from the research, there's real case study scenarios that I can share with you that show you that people resonate with this. The leading mental health practice in the world today is motivational interviewing, trauma-informed care. These principles that I'm sharing with you are rooted in that. It says when you get people to think about where they want to go instead of where they've been, they'll do better. Yeah. They'll do better. Do we need to reflect on where we've been and where we're at? Absolutely. That's a 20-80 rule. I said this on group on Thursday. 20% of your time is on where you've been and where you're at. 80% of that needs to be where you want to be and how we're going to get there.
Yep. When
we can do that, right? Imagine a firefighter coming into your building one day and saying, yep, there's a fire and we're all going to die. You're all on fire. Yeah, you're on fire. Hey, you're on fire. I've been on fire for 10 years. Or do you want someone to come in there and say, follow me, there's a way out of here?
Oh, yeah.
Douse yourself with this water. Or do we need to spend an hour and a half assessing the fact that we're all on fire? No, we need to get out. And here's the way out. Here, and when we get there, things are going to be better. Not perfect. Maybe just a little better, but better, lighter, because we're all doing it together, right? That's why the word formers is so critical for a group, because formers says it's transparent. Remember, we started off with being transparent. I'm letting you know I've been there and I've done that, and I'm sorry, I screwed up. But at the same time, I'm letting you know I'm working on myself, man. Like, I'm a former, but I'm in process. And then that third component is I'm creating, and so there's another version of me still to come. Right? That's what we call a dynamic statement. It talks about 3 time periods in one word: past, present, and future, right? When I say I'm an addict, it's a static because it never changes. It never gets better. It never gets worse. It's just the way it is. It's in a part of your identity that will not shift. And I think for the people that works for, so be it. but a lot of the men and women I've helped in my practice, a lot of the men and women who have been in our group say, this resonates with me. And let me make sure, I'll wrap this up so you can talk about that. There has never been a person who has confused this commentary with me saying, like, I have a problem with alcohol, but Sammy is telling me I can go ahead and drink. Absolutely not.
Right.
Nobody walks out of here confused about the message. Right? Nobody says, okay, what Sammy is saying is that I can do away with all the clinical advice, all the medical advice, all the diagnoses I've ever received, and just live how I want and drink as much or use as much. No, what we're saying is, if you have a problem with alcohol, if you've been diagnosed with alcoholism, if you live with alcoholism, or you live with addiction, a chemical addiction of some sort, then you need to abstain. Step one, you need to abstain. Step two, do something different with your life, right? We need to figure out what we're going to do about that. So people go on to be sober, even if they call themselves something else other than an addict and a criminal. They can, and it's not blurring the message. What it makes it is easier to swallow.
Yeah.
We all got to eat a teaspoon of shit every day. And for those of us who have been in this lifestyle so long, we have refused to eat that teaspoon of shit. So guess what, Monte? Me and you have been doing this for a long time. We got to work our way through that pile that we never ate through, plus still eat the teaspoon from today. We're working our way through the pile of shit.
Hey, and I don't care how much bread you put on it, it's still a shit sandwich.
I like sugar, but it doesn't make it a donut.
No, it does not. Yeah, man. To that point, yeah. Like, I'm still finding people that I need to make amends with, right? Like, and I'm still seeing them, and they'll hit me up, and sometimes they'll be like, I forgave you a long time ago, that shit doesn't matter. And, then I got to tell them, well, it does to me. Let me make this apology and tell you I love you and thank you, right? Like, it does to me, and thank you. And there are other people who will never in life, choose to speak to me or forgive me or let me be a part of their community, right? Like, and I have to accept that. I have to forgive myself for it and move forward and do my thing. But yeah, like, acknowledging that I was more than just my addiction, I think for me was the breakthrough I needed for maturation, right? Like, understanding that the things I'm doing now are just as valuable to my life as the mistakes I made in my past. Like, and and it's not a humbleness or anything like that. Sometimes it's just hard to believe that, right? Like, the events in my past, especially the ones that I caused, were so traumatic that they always stand out above the good things. I wrote a thing on Facebook to my dad the other day. It was his birthday. And, my dad wasn't the greatest person. My dad had a lot of problems. He had a lot of demons. The only time I ever knew my father clean and sober was in prison when we were in RCI together. That was the only time I had spent in my life with a dad who wasn't on heroin or coke or drunk or doing things. And I remember all the horrible times. Like, they're there, all the traumatic times. And I sat down and I thought, what am I going to write about my dad? Right? What am I going to write to say, anything about his birthday? And I wrote about all the times we would drive to Mexico in this station wagon my grandpa Seymour had bought for our family. And I would sit in the back, the very back, and it had the backward facing seat in the station wagon. It was old Malibu, and I would face out the back, burgundy. And my dad would play this horrible honky tonk country music. Like all of us in my family, my mom, my sisters, me, we hate country music. And he'd play like Hank Williams Jr. and Hank Williams Sr. and like, all this hillbilly. And we knew all the words to it because we were stuck in the car with that 8-track player and his 8-tracks every time we went anywhere, right? Like 8-track players. And we would sing along. And I remember feeling so free and happy during those trips. And I wrote about that. I remembered when we went to the mountains to get snow so we could bring snow to East LA and have a snowball fight. I wrote about the time he told me, like, my dad was a loving dad, right? Like, he said, "I love you, mijo." He said, he kissed me. He all the way to prison, right? Like, I'm in the joint. Like, I'm a grown fucking man. I got cases, right? Like, I put hands on people, and this old man would come up there, hug me, and kiss me every time he'd see me. Like, there was no, there was no, and he was a little bitty dude, and I was a big old fucking man. And like, if I tried to pull away, like, his hands would become steel, and he'd hold me and make me in the joint at RCI. Like, when we'd see each other in school, hug, kiss on the cheek. "Hey, mijo, are you all right?" Like, bang, right? And he had told me, "Listen, regardless of anything else, make sure your children know that you love them. Like, they have to know that you love them." Right? So, although I had all these traumatic experiences with my dad, right, my focus was on that day, what were the wonderful experiences, right? And so I think as addicts, we have a problem remembering that there was goodness in us as well. Like, there was a beautiful past as well as a traumatic past. And we take that traumatic past and we put it up at the most, right? And so when we started really digging in FA and talking about deep shit, we talked about the sustainability of recovery and how the traumatizing, horrible experiences would never carry us through, and that we had to look for the joy that there was in being in recovery. And whether that is, morning, Jay, how you doing? Love you. Whether that joy, right, is worth more than that trauma. And so when we think about our pasts and we think about our histories, I have to remember that the traumatic things that I've done, right, are sometimes less than the good things that I'm giving. And I have to accept that. I have to, as addicts, we're so down on ourselves. We're so deeply embedded in our own misery, right, that we don't want to recognize the joy that we have to offer, and the joy that we're creating, and the joy that we're experiencing. Like, for me, that's hard sometimes, especially lately, like this last year. Like, experiencing any joy and recognizing it as joyful has been difficult. But I do. And you said something very important to me when we were down in Missouri visiting. And you said, "Hey, listen, you're not giving him up. You're not sending him away. He's still with you. You're just allowing him to rest. You're giving him his peace." And that's something I've thought about a lot, and I've worked very hard to
And in turn, giving yourself peace.
Something he would want, right? Like, I know my son wanted the best for me. He did so much to make sure I knew he loved me. Like, he did so much to make sure I knew he forgave me.
It's what our kids want, man. And see, that's the part of recovery that it's probably just a nuance in recovery, right? Where we realize that we have to allow ourselves to be taken care of too, right? Like, we spend a lot of time trying to take care of others and be strong for others, but they want to see us in turn be taken care of and be strong too. Salinas has been telling me a lot lately. Like, I just want you to be at peace. Like, I want you to, find what you deserve. And while they know we're there for them, they want to see us living too. And I think we can find the balance between all the stuff we need to do to give away, and then accepting the spaces in our life that come with happiness, that come with joy, with value, with appreciation, ability to laugh,
Yeah.
Good discussion, man. So I think in some ways we're talking about step one, but really we're also linking it to step 4, right? Because the step 4 process is pretty simple. Difficult, but simple. Simple in the same sentence as, let's go climb Mount Everest. Very simple. Right? Easy to say.
Right.
in theory, in principle. Like, hey, you climb it, you get on it, go up to the top, come back down. Very simple. The process that I think I really love about step 4 that we've created is it basically asks you a series of questions. It says, okay, where have you been? Where are you at? Where would you like to be? How can we get there? The only reason I'm asking where we're at is because we need to take some of that into account. And we need to make sure that where you've been is accounted for now, because as you said, there might be parts that still need to be addressed there. Right. And plus, look, in the very beginning and throughout life, like when I was leaving the gang, I was leaving as a high ranking gang member. I had a lot of history, a lot of reputation. And almost every decision, imagine those being glasses, right? Gang member, gang leader, violent, aggressive guy. This is the glasses I wear, everything I look through. And so when they say, hey, you need to not be violent, I'm filtering that through these lenses. And those lenses say, wait a minute, if you're asking me to be nonviolent, then this is how it's going to affect me in my old world.
Right.
The first one is, well, people are going to think I'm soft, or I'm a bitch, or I'm going to get attacked, or people are going to think it's an opportunity to take advantage of me, right? Like, that's how we filter things. And if you filter it through those lenses, there's never going to be a good reason not to be violent.
Right.
So it's really a difficult process to take those lenses off and to see the world differently. Right? It's going to be a challenge. And now we're looking at the world through a different lens of recovery, of change. We filter everything. When we really get to it, Monte, think about how many conversations revolve around forgiveness, reconciliation, and redemption, right? For us, that houses all the components of all the things that we need to be focused on as we try to climb Mount Everest.
Oh, yeah.
So when we talk, you're just talking about Junior and, when how things are changing, they're not necessarily letting them go. We're looking at it through that filter now. And you know why we can do that, Monte? Because we're not directed, and nor being directed to spend our time thinking about what assholes we have always been and will always be. Right. If we had to filter everything by how much of an asshole I've always been and will always be, when could you ever get to a point where you could learn to love someone the right way? It would all be guilt motivated. It'd all be shame motivated. And you can't have shame and guilt in the same sentence with love. It stifles it. It's like putting the top over a flame, right? It's not going to work. Acceptance is important. But living in today and living in life is really more important. And I'll go on a limb, and I maybe we'll do an Ask Me Anything about what I mean by this at some point. But the 12 steps are not the point of a recovery program. The 12 steps lead to the point of life.
Bang, bang.
Right? The 12 steps are not the point. It's the map, but the map isn't the point. It's the destination, isn't it? And you know what the destination is? And here's where a lot of people confuse. It's the fucking process. We touched on this on Thursday. The real destination of getting our lives together is this process that we're going through. If we're not in this process of reflection, of talking, of building, of sharing, of forgiving, of reconciling, if we're not in that process, we're not really living yet. Because all of those things allow us to love better, to live better. It allows us to become lovable. And I can't talk enough about that. Because, man, as formers, we really don't feel very lovable.
Right.
Like, we don't deserve it. Again, I don't deserve it because of the asshole I always was and will be. Right? As long as I got to throw that out there, right? At 30 years sober, Monte, the most important thing about you is not that you were fucking sober for 30 years. I'm more interested in how you have lived.
Hey, so absolutely. We got about 15 minutes. And remember, I talked to you about my brother Dante. He was coming home after 27 years. He just called in, so let's bring him on camera and welcome him home, bro.
Let's do it.
Dante.
Hey, how you brothers doing?
What's up, Dante?
My brother.
Hey, nice to meet you, Sammy. I heard a lot of good things about you.
Welcome home, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So
We
Facebook.
appreciate that you're home. Shit.
Hell yeah.
Hey, it's still a little unbelievable.
I still feel the same way.
Hey, I keep telling myself it better not be a dream.
So I want you guys to know real quick here, without Dante and his influence, I'm not sure this would ever have come to fruition. Any of our live broadcasts, whether it be Ocor or what we're doing right now. Dante and I were friends a lifetime ago, before either of us were incarcerated. We went away. We spent a little bit of time together up in Green Bay, and then we got separated. And I came home, and Dante reached out to me when he heard from a few guys in the institution about Formers Anonymous and Sammy and what Sammy was doing and what I was doing to participate in the Racine area. And he reached out and he said, "Hey, can I interview you for a podcast on my show? And you can talk to us about FA and what we can do to better our community." And I said, "Absolutely. Like, I'm down with that. Let's talk." And so we did this 15-minute podcast. And during the podcast, he had asked me why it was so important to me. And my response was, "Listen, bro, this is our community. We destroyed it. It's our responsibility to rebuild it." And after the show, he called me back because you only get 15 minutes per call. And he says, "That's the name of your show. My fiance is going to call you. Y'all going to start a live broadcast. You're going to call it Our Community, Our Responsibility Racine." And he was like, "And you're going to talk about them discussions, and I'll write whatever you need in the background." And I said, "Dante, you fucking crazy." I said, "Don't nobody want to hear my punk ass talk for no half hour, 45 minutes. And he was like, "You're wrong." He was like, "This is you. This is your calling." And then he spent the next 5 years of his life making sure that his wife and him helped me build that and learn about it and make this happen. So just, this StreamYard platform, this is theirs. This isn't ours. We piggyback off of Incarcerate US StreamYard. They give us their platform to use. Technical difficulties, I can reach out to Julie, who, just so you know, is like Stashik, 6 hours ahead of us in England, right? And so when we do our live broadcasts at night, she stays up until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning doing the production for us, right? Without question, without hesitation, without concern, she is there. So this is Dante. He's the reason why the online stuff is even here, because without him, I would have never considered doing it. So thank you, Dante. Welcome home. I love you, bro. Seeing you the other day with Julie was amazing. How are you doing?
It's surreal, but at the same time, it's powerful. I've been through a lot. I learned a lot. It was a lot of humbling, a lot of crying, a lot of tears, a lot of thinking, a lot of dreaming. And now it's time to put all that to work, and that's where we at now. It's time to get to work now, and I'm blessed to have brothers like you and other brothers that kind of help this transition going in the direction that follows in you guys' footsteps.
There's a lot of life out here, Dante. There's a lot of life to live, man. I think we might have lost him.
Yeah, we could have. He might have bad reception where he's at. Dante, our brother Stashik from Poland says hi. Welcome home. Yeah, I think we might be losing him.
Okay.
But yeah, hey man, I am so excited he's home. I got to see him the other day, bro. And we were kind of keeping it quiet. He didn't want a lot of people to know he was home until he was ready to show himself. Like, he wanted that piece of anonymity and quietness. And it was so amazing because Julie came over from England and picked him up and brought him home. and then they spent a few days just by themselves, right? Like just seeing each other as husband and wife for the first time. And he told me, so he asked all the right questions, bro. Like all the questions I didn't ask, right? He asked all the right questions. How did you feel walking out the door? What were your thoughts? What were what roadblocks did you hit? What was different from what you seen in reality to what you thought about coming home from prison was, right? And when I told him everything, like nothing was what I thought it would be from the moment I walked out the door. And he said, that's what I thought. He was like, that, okay. He was like, how did you prepare for, how did you get through it so I can prepare for it? Like he was spot on, man. He was like, he had this desire to come home and not fuck up.
Yeah.
Right? Like without a doubt. Dante, we're not getting any feed from you, bro. I love you, man. Hit me up later this morning after we get off the live. We'll talk some more, bro.
That's probably a good place to wrap up, man. I mean,
Yeah.
we welcome home somebody who's been gone for a while and, hitting the road running, and that's what we got to do, man. Iron sharpens iron, man. Like
Every day,
man.
And for those of you out there who think that the fire is too much, remember you can't be steel without it. Like you can't become steel without that flame. You can't become steel without that hammer. Everything you suffer through, everything that you go through, just makes you stronger as you learn to suffer well.
Well, we're talking about creation, right? And a lot of creation starts with fire, man. It's the oldest and the newest parts of the earth come from fire, so it's an important part of it, man. Forming ourselves. We got to go through it. It's the only way forward is through it.
Bang, bang.
All right, brother. It's been good. Stashik, we love you, brother.
Stashik, love you. J Real, Joey, never doubt, man. My line is open 24/7.
Yep. Stashik, I'm going to call you on Messenger in a few minutes here, man. I know you wanted to catch up, so we'll do that.
You.
So, Monte, for those listening, just a quick announcement. We had an April 4th gig. That's now being pushed to April 11th. More information to come about that, okay?
Okay.
All right, brother. Peace out, man.
Love you, Stashik. All right, everybody. You have a wonderful day. Thank you for participating. And we'll talk to you next Saturday.